Okay, so who is ready to talk some Baltimore Ravens? And, I'm just gonna be honest, this is the first time I've had to go back and just write an intro all over again because I got nothing else to say other than I'm just jealous. I am so jealous that this team got to just pivot from Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer, but how did they do it? Did luck play a factor? Well, obviously, but there is a lot more to that answer than you'd think. Because, for my money, no NFL team has a more complicated and honestly tragic birth than the Baltimore Ravens. So maybe the people of Baltimore just deserve this success. And, obviously there's going to be a little pain sprinkled in, but strap in, y'all, because we got a long one. It is time to go over the entirety of the Baltimore Ravens history from Ray Lewis, Joe Flacco, and Lamar Jackson. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. So the Baltimore Ravens were not always an NFL team. Sort of. And the reason this video is titled what it is appropriate, trust me, because the Ravens were born from angry politicians, taxes, and old gray men. So this is Carroll Rosenbloom. He is old, but also has a lot of money, and he owned the Baltimore Colts back in the day. And Rosenbloom is one of the most interesting figures in sports history in general. He may have had mob ties. He did some pretty shady stuff in Super Bowl III potentially, and ended up drowning in 1979, but many reports claim that it was an assassination done by a man in a scuba suit, but that's a story for another time. The point is, he owned the Baltimore Colts, a franchise with some rich history, okay? Johnny Unitas, Buzz Nutter, Frank Philcock. The boys were giving the league work back in the day. Multiple championships, multiple MVPs. They were embedded into Baltimore culture itself. But the wife wanted to live on the West Coast, so Carroll Rosenbloom damn near decided to move the Colts to the West for the memes, but instead completed one of the rarest moves in sports when Carroll Rosenbloom effectively swapped franchises with the Los Angeles Rams. So while Carroll then got to live on the West Coast and own the LA Rams, the new owner of the Baltimore Colts would be Robert Irsay. Some old guy out there just fell on the floor hearing that name. So woohoo! Taxes! Yes! Now the Colts were under new ownership, pretty much because of taxes and warm weather. But now this is where the story kind of gets weird because honestly, I mean, you see the length of this video. It is comically long. So I'm going to take my time and make sure that you remember this is a Ravens video and tell the story right. Because I don't really think NFL Films did a great job with it.
Sometimes I pull a Baltimore Colts on girls. I'll be sleeping over. I'll be like, listen, I got a Mayflower van outside.
Was Robert Irsay, the new Colts owner, a great NFL owner? No, he was not. It definitely didn't help that a fair amount of humans never saw the man sober one time in his life, and other reports say he just wasn't a good guy in general. But if you don't know much about how the Colts eventually left Baltimore, I'm sure you know about the Mayflower vans. That's the way it's always been portrayed by the media. The Colts, out of complete nowhere, just packed up their stuff, snuck out the back door, got milk, and put on a new shirt. But that's not what happened. Sort of. When Robert Irsay took control of the Colts, they were not a desirable franchise, and history should remember it as that way. Yes, they had the culture, which is immensely valuable, but the stadium was a literal piece of dog shit, and, well, it turns out, the city of Baltimore didn't exactly feel Irsay's vibe, and so in the mid-70s, Irsay basically said, well, our lease on the stadium expires in '83, but until then, I'll see what I can get. As the Colts received offers from both Phoenix and Indianapolis as potential suitors. But, this right here is kind of the issue.
Robert Irsay told us he was not moving the blankety-blank team.
I have not any intention of moving the team. If I did, I would tell you about it.
Why, bro? Just be honest. Damn it. Well, okay. See, this isn't good. Don't lie to people, guys. I know that sounds like a Caillou quote, but that bald shithead is right. Because by the time that the lease on the stadium expired and there were no renovations to speak of, Irsay said, alright, fuck it. Then packed the Colts in the moving vans and left Baltimore in the darkness in order to avoid the fuzz. So the people of Baltimore were lied to. Their traditions were taken from them. Their culture and their team was now gone. So although the Ravens will eventually become pound for pound one of the most successful franchises in sports in terms of just pure winning percentage, they did have to endure the worst thing that can ever happen to a fan base, having your team taken away from you as you helplessly watch and pray for a second chance. Years went by. Nothing but monotony and CFL Stallions football, maybe? I don't know, the dark ages were rough. But then, Art fucking Modell, the man whose face is on 60% of all toilet paper in Cleveland to this very moment, had his grave pissed on more times than can even be counted, became one of the most loved figures in Ravens history. When, despite being offered an expansion team in Baltimore if he sold the Browns to a Cleveland owner, he said fuck that and just moved the Browns to Baltimore himself. Now, there are layers to this as well. In the early 90s, when the Jaguars and Panthers were born, it was looking like Baltimore may never get a team again, because allegedly, Skins owner at the time, Jack Kent Cooke, was prepared to move the Skins if Baltimore ever got another team due to marketing reasons. And maybe because the current commish was lawyer friends with good old Jack, he told Baltimore to build a museum with all that potential stadium money, rather than, reestablishing a culture that was stitched into the city itself. Thanks, Paul. Real good suggestion there. So yeah, one man's pain is another man's pain. The Baltimore Colts died for the Indianapolis Colts, and the Cleveland Browns died and were reborn from the ashes, not as a phoenix, but as a raven. A Baltimore Raven. It came a little too close from being the Baltimore Americans or the Marauders, but sweet baby Jesus, I tell you what. Ravens fans were already crying tears of joy because NFL football was back. But they got gifted the greatest treasure trove possible because, yes, this technically was an expansion team. The Ravens had never existed before, but they also weren't. They literally just straight up took the entire Browns team themselves. And you know what the funniest part about this is? The Browns were good. They were really, really good. In 1995, the Cleveland Browns, before the season, looked to be building something truly special. They were coached by Bill Belichick. They had an amazing defense in past years and were expected to be title contenders. It's just, the culture was shifted after the fans were told they were leaving by year's end, and unfortunately, they couldn't keep Bill and the Ravens staff, which is a crazy what if, but they were able to keep arguably a more important piece on the staff. I think he was better at his job than Bill Belichick would be if he was in that position. And that man was the previous director of player personnel at the Browns and new Baltimore Ravens general manager, Ozzie Newsome. Ozzie Newsome is one of the greatest NFL players of all time, but he played for the Browns. And then after his playing days came to an end, he began to work in the front office for the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns had given everything to Ozzie, but Cleveland was put on the guillotine and put to rest in the most violent and gory way possible. And although the Browns would be reborn as a husk of their former selves eventually, the Ravens took everything the Browns had built. So one fan base suffered while one prospered. And the Baltimore fans got to enjoy the wonders and glories of Ozzie Newsome and Marvin Lewis. But hey, that's actually a great thing. Okay, Marvin Lewis is an amazing defensive coordinator, and in a historical context, he is inarguably one of the most successful defensive coordinators of all time. So, although he wasn't going to get the pieces he needed to form a beast of a defense right away, the demon was brewing in Baltimore. The test tubes were ready. They just needed some dogs, some feral, diseased dogs to send at the enemy. But luckily, Ozzie Newsome is arguably the greatest general manager in NFL history and possibly sports history. And in his first ever NFL draft in the job, he showed why he is just that guy. And he not only changed the Ravens forever, but he changed the entire NFL landscape forever as well. Ozzie Newsome and the Ravens needed to get their first picks correct. Take the best player available and then see where the pieces fall where they may from there. And I'll just say this. This draft had 3 Hall of Famers in the first round. That sounds pretty good, probably slightly above average for a first round, so there was an opportunity to grab a cornerstone. Hell, not even a cornerstone, a player that will define the culture of this team for the rest of this organization's existence. But with the 4th and 26th picks in the draft, their chances seemed low, but what happened next is, in my eyes, the greatest first round any general manager will ever have in NFL history.
Baltimore Ravens select John Ogden, tackle, UCLA. With the 25th selection in the first round, the Baltimore Ravens have selected Ray Lewis, linebacker.
Are you fucking kidding me? If a redraft for the entirety of the draft was done out of every single player, the first 2 picks would be players taken by the Ravens. In the first round alone, they selected Jonathan Ogden, the greatest left tackle in the history of football, and Ray Lewis. In my mind, up there with Mike Singletary, but I'd say he too is the greatest middle linebacker in football. Browns fans were 1 year away from Belichick and Ray Lewis. Oh, I'm sorry, that's just so funny to me. But the Ravens nearly didn't draft either guy. Despite Jonathan Ogden being unanimously the top player on Ozzie's board, Art Modell wanted them to draft Lawrence Phillips, a running back who went 6th overall and never eclipsed 700 yards in his career. And for Ray Lewis, well, that was even closer to not happening, honestly. Coming into the draft, Lewis had incredible instincts, but he was slightly undersized, and being used to Belichick's schemes in Cleveland, Ozzie wasn't sure if he would fit the build for this defense that the Ravens were going to try to build. But Marvin Lewis and a little-known defensive assistant at the time by the name of Jim Schwartz said this of Lewis: Ray Lewis is the most dynamic leader of the group. The guy drips with charisma. He is extremely competitive and constantly challenges other players to games. Then he'll keep playing until he wins. And when the Ravens drafted him, stealing him away from Green Bay, who would have taken him 100% 1 pick later, as in this famous photo, Ray himself confirmed he was on the phone with the Packers, Baltimore knew they had just gotten an absolute warrior. Ray Lewis had to go through about as rough of a childhood as humanly possible to get to the point he's at today. There were days where apparently he didn't eat because the house simply had no food. His mother was the victim of pretty horrendous abuse, but Ray Lewis just stuck to his dream, and he did it. And in 1996, he and the Ravens were ready to go to work. It's just, the Ravens were not that good. Yeah, pretty much the most notable thing from their first year was half their coaching staff got trapped in an elevator in the middle of a game, but other than that, the defense was pretty terrible. And in 96, the Ravens' first season in the NFL was kind of summed up by their first couple of games of the season. Luckily, Week 1 was canceled this year. Weird, I know, yeah, kind of crazy that happens. This is a fake score though, by the way. This game didn't happen, but in the coming weeks, they just couldn't stop anyone. While on offense, it kind of consisted of Vinny Testaverde just lobbing it more than fucking Brett Favre did that year, and that was just a theme for the next few seasons as well. By 1998, the Ravens were still not that good. Yes, Ray Lewis and Jonathan Ogden had developed incredibly well, and so did their draft buddy Jermaine Lewis, who was a hell of a special teams player, but the defense was falling behind. In 96 and 97, their defenses were ranked at 28th and 18th in the league. Kinda rough, but the Ravens' 98 campaign at least had its moments, and the opening game of the season was versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And remember, this wasn't really a rivalry yet, because they had only beaten the Steelers once at this point, but damn it, this time was going to be different. They had a new stadium, and the Steelers were having a down year, and they got absolutely fucking demolished. But they did have their revenge game versus the Colts. In an emotional game, tears everywhere, Art Modell sat in his box and smiled down upon the few unfortunate Browns fans who had yet to witness the third impact, and made them watch as the Ravens, with Johnny Unitas standing on their sideline, not the Colts, came back down 21-31 and beat Indianapolis. But they still fucking sucked though, okay? They were better than Cleveland though, which is, important for the lore, I guess. And the lore got real spicy in 1999 because once again, the Browns and Ravens were intertwined with each other. And this time it was for the services of one of the most hyped up coaching prospects ever. Brian Billick, Vikings guy, good offense, Randy Moss, Super Bowl champion. I'm lying. The Vikings actually lost. But he was a guy that had franchise-saving capabilities written all over his forehead and nutsack. He could turn around an entire franchise, and for a Ravens team that had pieces but no culture yet, Brian Billick is what they needed. So of course they got him, because Browns fans get nothing. Nothing. You're not even allowed to smile. And after attempting to kidnap the man, Cleveland was out of the Billick sweepstakes, and the Ravens enticed him with the play of Ray Lewis and others. And with that being enough, on January 19th, 1999, Brian Billick would be hired as the Ravens head coach, and the culture for Baltimore would finally be established. So by this point, the Ravens still weren't over the hump, but every single year, Ozzie Newsome was just adding more and more pieces to the chessboard. The defense was getting so loaded with talent that Marvin Lewis would have had to channel the instincts of prime Joe Barry to ruin this defense, which he thankfully didn't, because it is in him. But like I said, he was a good defensive coordinator. But to add on to the nucleus that is Ray Lewis, they added the mitochondria in Tony Siragusa in 1997. Did you know that's the powerhouse of the cell? And then they brought in Michael McCrary to be the organelles. And in 98, they added the aging veteran Rod Woodson to be the gallbladder of the cell, or something along the lines. And all those guys were on the team in 1999, so great defense, right? Well, no, but also they had a larger problem. Look, this isn't like a traditional pain documentary video. You get that, right? Honestly, it's going to be more Brown's pain, if anything, for a while at least. But after Vinny Testaverde left for the Jets, the Ravens' quarterbacking situation was truly something to marvel. In 1999, the Ravens had no idea who was going to huck the pigskin for them. They started off with former Lions Hall of Famer Scott Mitchell, who most notably stole Johnny Unitas' jersey number and appeared on The Biggest Loser. He tossed 2 picks and 48 yards with a passer rating of 11, and somehow almost beat Pittsburgh, but he was gone, never to play again. So who's next? Who's down to die in Baltimore? Well, that would be Stoney Case. Stoney Case. Are we serious here? Dude was out of the league for 3 full years while also still playing sometimes from 95 to 99, but here he was, starting quarterback of the Ravens. And well, he got a shot to be the guy right after Mitchell, as in week 3, 1 week after finishing the Steelers game strong, versus Cleveland, they won 17-10, with Stoney putting the team on his dick with 3 picks, 0 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 30. Mother of pearl. Why? Well, then they turned to the 3rd string, Tony Banks, who was like fine. I don't know, an 81 passer rating in the season seemed like fucking Tom Brady compared to the prime Nathan Peterman production they were getting a week ago, and so this poor defense had to watch as this team was dragged down to just 8 wins, which, to be fair, was helped by Tony Banks. It could have been worse, so the offense, it just needed to be fixed. And that was Ozzie's main focus. They needed to lock in and only worry about firepower on the offense. Except there were other distractions, and as you might imagine, it's time to talk about the Ray Lewis situation. Alright, if you're not familiar on what the Ray Lewis situation is, well, that's my job, luckily, so I'm here to explain that. Alright, just keep an open mind, okay? And no, I'm not talking about his sex tape. That's, for later. But in the months leading up to the 2000 Baltimore Ravens season, to this point, honestly, the Ravens hadn't gotten very much media attention at all. They were just kinda there, similar to like the Titans today. People knew that they existed and that Ray Lewis was good and all, but they weren't really a threat until the story that took over sports came to light.
The epic football career of Ray Lewis almost ended 13 years ago outside the Cobalt Lounge nightclub in Atlanta.
The biggest headline in sports, and one of the biggest of the last 25 years. Did Ray Lewis kill somebody? The story goes that while on a night out, Lewis and a few of his friends were involved in a fight that ended with 2 men deceased. However, all accounts from both parties seem to add to Ray Lewis himself at least not being directly responsible for the deaths, so he's good, right? Ray's completely innocent. But of course, it gets murky, because at the time, Ray Lewis blatantly lied to the police to try and cover up that he was involved at all, which, you know, is a crime, but he eventually ended up confessing to that and took the misdemeanor, while the court ended up acquitting his friends because the prosecutor kind of framed it in a way that made the 2 men who were now deceased seem like the aggressors. So, okay, case solved. See, we need to chill out on the Ray Lewis killed people jokes, alright? But what happened to his white suit he was wearing that night? How come it's never been found, and why were his friend's clothes also missing conveniently the night of the alleged crime? Never mind, okay, think what you will. The point is, Golly gee, did Ray Lewis have an eventful and loaded offseason. Morality aside, we're going back to football for a second, because they added 2 players who were supposed to help the offense, maybe. One in Shannon Sharpe, a Hall of Fame tight end with Super Bowl experience, and the other was a quarterback in Trent Dilfer, who made a Pro Bowl back in 1997, but since then he's been an up and down QB at best. But this was finally it. Ozzie Newsome had assembled Exodia. The defense was already grimy in 99, but in 2000, we saw dominance to the likes of which the NFL has quite literally never seen since on defense alone. Like I said, Ozzie got all the chess pieces down. The defense was perfect. Marvin Lewis had the personnel to do whatever he wanted. Big, strong, fat guys in the middle, led by the Goose, opened up things for Ray Lewis and linebacker Peter Boulware to fly wherever they wanted. But just because you got the pieces in the right places, if the guy sitting in the chair doesn't know how to play fucking chess, we got a massive problem. And quarterbacking was still a big issue. It was threatening to hold back one of the greatest defenses ever. And what's funny is their best 3 players on offense kinda made it seem like they were loaded. They had a 1-2 punch in the backfield with Priest Holmes and an explosive rookie in Jamal Lewis, who would run for well over 1,000 yards. And Shannon Sharpe was still choking out whoever was in front of him left and right. So, oh fuck me, man. Tony Banks again. How the fuck could they not find some... Alright, whatever. Somehow, Tony Banks beat out Trent Dilfer to start the season, and the Ravens got off to an absolutely historic start on one side of the ball. 3 shutouts through 5 weeks. 5 games played, 3 times. Did they not even allow a singular point to be scored? How? I mean, they were allowing 11 points a game, only allowing 55 total in 5 games, which is really unfortunate because that would have been good for an NFL record for at least points allowed through 5 games since 2000, even today, but the Dolphins ended up breaking that record the same year, so, you know, tough skis. You're also probably wondering, dearest Frog, what art thou saying? How in the shit could they have allowed 55 points? They had 3 shutouts, and, well, dearest viewer, you'd be right. They just so happened to allow a near 40-piece to the Jaguars in a win. I don't know. I don't know how this happened. Jimmy Smith went nuclear, and despite allowing 36 points, the Ravens were still on track to beat the at-the-time record by the Steel Curtain Steelers for shutouts in a season. Because the record was 5 in a year, and it was week 5, and the Ravens already had 3. I mean, this Ravens team was breaking people. In week 4, versus the Bengals, and this is Scott Mitchell's revenge game where he went for 90 yards and 2 picks. They shut them out, of course, and made Corey Dillon just give up. The dude just straight up refused to go back in the game, and, you know, fair enough, there was nothing he could do, because going against the defense with Dwayne Starks and Chris McAllister, a strong cornerback duo, Michael McCrary and Tony Siragusa, 2 beasts who dominated the D-line, Jamie Sharper, Peter Boulware, and Ray Lewis, all the while, one of the smartest players to ever play the game was lurking behind them in Rod Woodson. So, you see why Scott Mitchell had a tough time against them now? Yeah, good defense, but they still didn't know how to play chess. Tony Banks had the offense absolutely just sitting in the mud, staring forward into the fireball in the sky until their corneas melted away. The offense was lifeless. They couldn't do anything, and this was extremely disappointing given the new hire of Brian Billick, and early on, people respected Billick. He did build a no-nonsense, respect-driven culture, which was important, but the offense was just... It was so much better than in 1999, as through 9 weeks, with all their new pieces and without fucking Stoney Casey, they averaged a whole 0.1 points more per game than they did the year prior. It's just... I mean, clap it up. Fucking clap it up! It's disgusting to see a defense like this wasted. So the Ravens needed to change something. I mean, Tony Banks was not it. So he was fed to the Gators, and in came Trent Dilfer. And along with the new quarterback, Billick realized, hey, maybe let's play to the team's strengths instead of airing it out to Quadre Ismail and Travis Taylor. Yeah, the Ravens aren't allowed to have a good receiver, but from week 9 on, the Ravens fed their youngling, and Jamal Lewis turned into the spirit of, like, Isaiah Pacheco, but better and angrier. And all of a sudden, it was coming together. Jamal Lewis had ignited life into the team, but maybe Maybe that came a few games before in a loss versus the Titans, because Tony Siragusa is a bit of an interesting guy for sure, rest in peace, but in a game versus the Titans, a very important game for a likely playoff matchup, they needed the goose, right? Well, the problem was he had to shit and couldn't, and almost missed the game because of it, but instead, he chose to tape his cheeks together in order to stop the Brown River from flowing, and he told the trainer, listen to me, and you listen closely. If I'm ever down on my back, I'm not hurt. I shit myself, so carry me off the field on a stretcher, give me some clothes and put me back in, and well, reports conflict whether this was the Titans or Skins game, but all I'm saying is that versus the Titans, Tony Siragusa went down with what was initially reported to be a devastating spinal injury that could have threatened his career, but miraculously, 10 minutes later after being carried off on a stretcher, he was back in. And no, this will not be the last legendary Ravens poop game. So the poop sparked the turnaround, and in week 13, if the Ravens weren't already viewed as a threat, this legendary defense got matched up against one of the single worst teams, if not the worst team in history. Browns versus Ravens. So, alright, right away to start the game, the Browns went on an impressive touchdown drive with Doug Peterson leading them to a 7-0 lead. From there, the Browns would only manage 26 yards for the rest of the fucking game. For an entire 3-hour period, the Cleveland Browns gained less yards than an average Jamar Chase post route. You get it now, right? The Ravens knew how to play football, as they won by 40, and from there finished the year coasting, only allowing one more shutout, so, you know, kinda weak, but they finished the season going 12-4, despite at one point going 5 straight games without an offensive touchdown. But the records this Ravens defense still own today need to be glazed, okay? I'm sorry, I gotta. By year's end, Ray Lewis won his first Defensive Player of the Year award. They had 4 All-Pro selections on defense alone, not even including Jonathan Ogden, and since 1978, no NFL defense has allowed less points per game in a 16-game season than the 2000 Ravens. None. They also ended the year with the least rushing yards allowed in a 16-game season since 1996, and just for funsies, let's do the thing, huh? Let's compare the 2000 Ravens to the 1985 Bears, because that's what everyone wants to know about. Is it fair? No. Era difference is a massive thing, but is it fun? Hell the fuck yeah! So this is my video, okay? I don't care, I do what I want. So the Ravens allowed less yards, less rushing yards, but slightly more passing yards than the Bears. But it gets crazy when comparing touchdowns, because the Bears allowed 16 passing touchdowns on the season, which is, you know, already very, very good. But the Ravens in 2000 allowed 16 touchdowns total. And although the Bears had them beat 54-49 in total takeaways, given the ineptitude of the Ravens offense for the entire season, although the Ravens didn't have a tough schedule by all things considered, I'm Team 2000 Ravens over the 85 Bears, I think. Now, the 86 Bears is a whole nother thing. You see, according to advanced... Okay, that's enough, Tubfrog. Okay, shut the fuck up. Nobody cares anymore. But yeah, the Ravens went into the playoffs with a renewed offense, led by a new quarterback and running back, and one of the best, if not the best defense the NFL has ever seen. But still, after they lost that poop game versus the Titans, Tennessee took the division because the divisions were whack back in the day, and the Ravens had to play in the wild card and got handed a nice piece of bloody meat with the Denver Broncos, quarterbacked by Gus Frerotte. Need I say more? No, I won't say more. The Ravens just did Ravens things. Shannon Sharp got his revenge. They didn't allow anything near a touchdown, forced a 44 passer rating and a pick, which led to another rare, shiny Pokemon sighting of third backup quarterback Jarius Jackson. I've said this before, but there is no way that a single one of you know who Jarius Jackson is. I don't believe it. Trent Dilfer played well, and the Ravens moved on to play the first playoff chapter in, honestly, one of the most underrated rivalries in NFL history. Ravens versus Titans. The two best defenses in football, with two great running backs in Jamal Lewis and Eddie George. It was gonna get fucking nasty, and boy did it. This was one of the weirdest playoff games ever played. Let me show you this piece of paper, okay? Oh, what does this piece of paper show you? Well, it says that the Ravens had 6 first downs to the Titans' 23. they were outgained in total yards 317 to 134 and were doubled in the time of possession battle. The Titans lost by 14 points. For the entire game, the Ravens offense looked absolutely inanimate. Maybe that was just because Titans defensive coordinator Greg Williams was, stealing everyone's playbook back then. But once again, this was a battle between the two best defenses in football. It was 10-10 in the fourth, and Steve McNair, the future MVP of the league, was driving. Rod Woodson got a penalty, and the Titans lined up to kick a 37-yard field goal. And that's when the play that changed Ravens history forever would occur.
Blocked again. And picked off. He can run it. And Mitchell is going to go all the way for a Baltimore touchdown.
This one run by the Ravens picked up damn near more yards than all other Ravens drives combined, but it wasn't over yet. After getting the ball back, Trent Dilfer shoved his fist at his ass and gave the ball back to the Titans. And for some background, Eddie George and Ray Lewis do not like each other as players. They're bros off the field, but back then they wanted to eat each other's guts when the ball was snapped. They played twice a year, trash-talked each other after every play, and since Eddie was a running back and Ray was a linebacker, they matched up a lot. And then, with just under 7 minutes left on the clock, McNair dropped back, looked for Eddie George with Ray Lewis hovering a little bit behind him, and Ravens fans, put down the lotion for a second. Okay, hold on. Okay, now you can grab it.
Intercepted by Ray Lewis. He's going to go for a touchdown.
Pick 6. Game over. The Ravens managed to once again pick up just 6 first downs and drop 24 points. And from there, they moved on. This is a Ravens defense that rarely gives you a chance to drop double digits, so getting even slightly unlucky versus them can be a death sentence. And in this game, that's what happened. As afterwards, with Ray Lewis conquering the Titans, Eddie George came to the Ravens locker room and told Ray, "It had to be me or you. I love you, brother. Go get it." But their challenge in front of them was looking pretty tough. The John Gruden, Rich Gannon Raiders were playing some great football in 2000. Rich Gannon was a top 3 quarterback in the league, and their defense was top 10 as well. And the spread reflected that, as at home, the Raiders were about touchdown favorites, because with Trent Dilfer at quarterback, there was no world where the Ravens would have the more potent offense at any point in this game. Well, unless...
That's illegal. That is absolutely illegal.
Rich Gannon literally almost died. It turns out, having a 6'3", 350-pound guy fall on you with all of his weight on a dirty-ass hit with the intention to hurt somebody, it is really, really painful. And so, although Gannon was playing poorly before his injury, after he got hurt, the Raiders' offense had nothing. And deep in their own territory, the Raiders decided to send a blitz! And Shannon Sharp got a 90-yard touchdown. Great job, boys. That is how it is done. But yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I get it, okay? A lot of old heads say that football was better because it's more physical back in the day. But I'm sorry. Watch this entire game, front and back, and tell me this is good entertainment. Besides that one play, the longest play of the day was a 30-yard run, and that ended up leading to nothing. There were only field goals besides Shannon's touchdown, but I guess that's what the Ravens defense does. And now they made the Super Bowl. After only allowing 1 touchdown in their entire postseason run thus far, and somehow they were only favored by 3 versus their opponents, the New York Giants, who could not have possibly matched up worse with the Ravens. See, the Giants were basically the Ravens, but worse in pretty much every way. They had a great defense and a lackluster offense, but of course their defense wasn't as good as the Ravens. They didn't have Rod fucking Woodson, the goddamn goose, or one-time Merc Defensive Player of the Year. But before the Super Bowl, we were looking at a quarterback matchup between Trent Dilfer and Kerry Collins. Mercy above. And I know I haven't really talked a lot about Brian Billick's impact on the team thus far, but he really was the glue that held everything together. And before the big game, the media seemed to get people remembering what happened with Ray Lewis months prior, but Billick basically told the media to shut the fuck up or we'll make you all shut the fuck up. So I don't know, man. If I could go back in time, I would have bet my mortgage and my firstborn on the Ravens dissecting the Giants and using their remains for a child science experiment, because that is exactly what happened. I can't say they had the best defensive Super Bowl performance ever because the 85 Bears and 76 Steelers exist, but they didn't do half bad either. Just casually forced the Giants quarterback Kerry Collins into the single worst quarterback performance by any Super Bowl QB ever. I'm sorry. Yes, you can argue Tony Eason was worse, but Kerry finished the whole game and barely broke 100 passing yards, even though the whole fucking game was basically just garbage time. He had 40 pass attempts and picked up 112 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions, one of which was a 50-yard pick six to finish with a passer rating of 7.1. The Giants didn't even attempt a field goal all game long, let alone get a touchdown. Their only score was a special teams run back, so yeah, not bad, huh? And they did it. Cleveland Browns fans sulked deeper into their tar pit of misery as they watched the Baltimore Ravens, a team built by their own personnel and their former owner Art Modell, lift the Lombardi Trophy. As Ray Lewis won Super Bowl MVP, and the Baltimore Ravens, led by a top 3 defense of all time, won Super Bowl 35, 34-7. So, what a season. I mean, I already told you about how loaded the defense was, but so was the coaching staff. Brian Billick now had a ring, and so did his entire defensive staff alone, which included future head coaches in Marvin Lewis, Jack Del Rio, Mike Smith, and Rex Ryan. But these guys were so competitive that all they wanted to hear was one word for 01. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Yeah, it was sweet having the same commish who a few years ago told you to fuck off and build the museum hand you a Lombardi, but what about twice? Well, I know we're about 20 years too early, but the Chiefs had other plans. The 2001 Ravens ended up being the first team ever to be featured on Hard Knocks, so we really got to know the players a lot, which was cool. We got the antics of Goose and Shannon Sharp, and Goose literally blocked the door with a fucking table, but it wasn't him though. I mean, come on, he was framed.
I just hope the person who is responsible for that really, comes forward.
But yeah, like I was saying, the Chiefs really got him good this year. First off, the Ravens had to make the tough decision of moving on from Trent Dilfer. Now, Dilfer is still pissed about this decision today because he said he was playing injured, which is fair, but I mean, let's also be honest, it's not like he was a developing player, and instead, the Ravens picked up a Pro Bowl quarterback from Kansas City in Elvis Grbac to be finally a real star quarterback in Baltimore. But besides letting the Ravens take the sexiest athlete alive from them, the Chiefs' real steal came when they signed their backup running back Priest Holmes to a 5-year, $8 million contract. They literally got him on a veteran minimum annually, and he went on to lead the league in rushing yards in 2001 with 1,555. But they have Jamal Lewis. Never mind, he tore his ACL. Okay, well, damn. I guess the offense is all up to Elvis now, huh? It was all up to Elvis. And, he started out okay. He went for 262 yards and played efficient football in their first game of the season. And the hope was that although Jamal Lewis was gone for the year, new rookie tight end Todd Heap could open up the receiving game a little bit more with Shannon Sharp forming a solid duo. I guess tight end trio, because apparently John Jones was on this team. But Elvis was not having any of that. He said, fuck you all, I'm the captain of this bitch, and I'm sinking it. As after week 1, he never even came close to a 100 passer rating for the rest of the regular season, as by year's end, he was statistically the 3rd worst quarterback in football, just barely being beaten out by John Kitna and fucking Chris Winkie. And it's not like the Ravens had options. They signed Randall Cunningham, who balled out with Billick in Minnesota, but he was 38 now and had nothing left. But the defense was being wasted again. Except unlike last year, they didn't have the Dilfer come in to save them. And with their leading rusher being Terry Allen at the age of 33, I mean, why? What happened? Ozzie, I love you, but come on now. You gotta make a trade or something, because the 2001 Ravens defense, talent-wise, might have been better than 2000. They had another top 5 defense, but with their offense somehow getting worse than what it was maybe 2 years ago, this team never really had a shot at real contention, with their last flame of hope being extinguished in the way they finished the season, as in their final 2 games, although they went 1-1, Elvis Grbac averaged 182 yards, 0.5 touchdowns, 1 pick, and a passer rating of 58.4. They couldn't run, they couldn't pass, but I guess Ray Lewis was angry, so they had a chance every week because of that, which led them to beating Peyton Manning and the Colts, but this would be the last time they would beat Peyton Manning for a long, long, long time. But they did make the playoffs. They finished with a record of 10-6, and yes, they won their first wildcard game, 20-3, but they got really lucky. The usually dangerous Jermaine Lewis fumbled the opening kickoff, but the Dolphins had to settle for 3, choosing to not go for it on 4th and 1 because this isn't the modern NFL. And from there, they wouldn't score again, as a game-ending pick off of the hands of James McKnight ended the game. And I mean, you know, if you squint hard enough, you could see the vision. Yes, this was a bad Dolphins offense, but Elvis and Terry Allen both played well. Elvis had his best game since week 1, and Terry Allen ran for 100 yards. But now, it was about to get ugly. The Bill Cowher Steelers made every game physical, and this divisional game between the Ravens and Steelers was physical, and not the game you want to be missing your star running back in. And so if the Ravens were to win this game, Elvis Grbac was going to need to make some plays.
Going to be intercepted in the end zone, intercepted.
Not only did he have 3 picks, 2 of which in the first quarter, but the Ravens didn't score a single offensive touchdown all game. It was a mess. Elvis looked like shit, and he was so humiliated. He just quit. He quit football forever. He retired following the season at just the age of 31 and never played again. Great. We really fixed the quarterback problem there, huh? So here we are entering another year of an amazing defense, and we still don't have a quarterback. Like, yes, the Ravens have done a great job of drafting still to this point. Like, a ridiculously good job. Like I said, in 2001, Todd Heap turned out to be a great player, and in 2002, they drafted a niche player who you might remember. He was like fine. His name is Ed Reed, you know, maybe the smartest player to ever play the position. First ballot Hall of Famer, cool beard, you know him. But they needed a damn quarterback, and they didn't draft one really, but this was a rough quarterback class. Like, David Garrard was the 4th rounder, and he turned out to be the best player here. And so the quarterback carousel spun again, and in came Jeff Blake from the Saints to be their new guy. Look, I didn't mean for this to devolve into like a why every Ravens quarterback failed after Vinny Testaverde video, but that's just what this era was, because they were basically being cursed by drafting the best player available every year. They kept getting good players, but without a quarterback, it's just so hard to win consistently. So after both their starting running back and quarterback retired, with Jamal Lewis expected to be back, they were supposed to be just an annoying team to play against, you know, because every score with them is like 10-16, win or lose. But by this point, the roster was starting to rot. Rod Woodson, Tony Siragusa, and Shannon Sharp were not here anymore, and with the new young guys brought in, this actually made the Ravens the youngest team in the NFL in 2002. But their chances of doing anything this year went down alongside their best player, as in Week 5, Ray Lewis went down with a season-ending shoulder injury, and he ended up playing one more game, then went out again, so he basically was done for the year. And without Lewis's presence and still a bad offense, the Ravens plummeted down the rankings, having the 19th best defense in the league, ranked 1 spot above the expansion Texans in their first year of existence. And this was all good enough to miss the playoffs, and all of a sudden the Ravens were kind of a bottom 10 team in the league. I don't know why they're called the Browns here, but without an offense, I mean, what were they going to do? They couldn't score. Who cared how good the defense was with Ed Reed and Ray Lewis? With rookie Kyle Bowler set to be the quarterback in 2003, why would anything change? And that's when, from the shadows, the man who had been carrying this offense on his back for years put on the cape and had possibly pound for pound, in terms of a pure carry job at the time, the greatest running back season ever
The DEA have downed Escobar and the Cali cartel, but cocaine production is still going up.
All of my niggas gon' ride with it in the pocket, the rocket like killing mom. Mama told me the power was in the tongue, but it probably ain't powerful as a gun.
The Ravens were so back, and this guy was the reason for it. Jamal Lewis ran for 2,066 rushing yards, at the time the second most in NFL history, and he did this averaging 129.1 yards per game on the ground. He played every game that year and just had some disgusting performances. In the second game of the season, he erupted for 295 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then in the second game versus the Browns later that year, he ran for 180 and 3 tutties. So in 2 games versus Cleveland, he averaged a modest 237.5 yards per game and 2.5 touchdowns. Solid stuff. And Jamal's historic season wasn't enough for him to get MVP, but he did win the Offensive Player of the Year award in an absolute landslide, as his teammate Ray Lewis did the same with the Defensive Player of the Year award. But what was also kind of crazy is that Priest Holmes had a filthy year too. So, I mean, just imagine if these two were still together. So Brian Billick had the boys balling again. With Marvin Lewis leaving a few years ago, some thought Baltimore's defense would never return to relevancy, but come on now. Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, and now another Hall of Fame player in Terrell Suggs was here too after they drafted him, who won Defensive Rookie of the Year? This is not fair. Literally looking at the awards from this year, every single one of these players besides Peyton would end up being a Raven in the next 10 years. How fun is that? Am I right? And although Jamal Lewis couldn't quite catch Eric Dickerson, they had an amazing season. They had an incredible game versus Seattle where backup Anthony Wright went for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in an overtime shootout. And in the wild card versus the MVP of the league with Kyle Bowler hurt, Anthony Wright was going to be the guy in this next chapter of Titans versus Ravens rivalry football. But, you know, this wasn't an ideal time to have a backup because they were playing against Steve McNair, who was the MVP of the league. But once again, the Ravens defense had a day. They damn near did a better job in this game than they did in 2000. Steve McNair had his worst game of the entire season, but with Jamal Lewis held in check and Anthony Wright doing absolutely nothing after an unnecessary roughness penalty, a below-average punt, and a 46-yard field goal, the Titans took down the Ravens 20-17. But the future was definitely bright. It's just, you know, there was just one fucking problem. But it's like, how can you even get mad at the Ravens front office? Because at this point, free agency had yet to be completely modernized to the point where it is today, and they were just drafting the best player available in the draft, and it just so happened to be that it was a defensive player most of the time. But it's fine, okay? 2004 is going to be the year of the Raven, because the culture was going to shift forever, and they were going to bring in a true superstar wide receiver. And Ozzie did just that. It was brilliant. They had all the pieces in place. A young and ferocious, ugly defense. A sophomore quarterback expected to take a leap forward. The best running back in football damn near. A great coach. And when they traded away just a second-round pick to acquire Terrell Owens, a Hall of Fame wide receiver in his fucking prime, I mean, you might as well just hand them the trophy now. Wait, what do you mean his agent screwed up his contract? Are you fucking kidding me? His agent just made an oopsie and thought the 49ers still had his rights, which meant he was a free agent, and technically the Ravens couldn't trade for him anymore, and he signed with the Eagles. Okay, poggers. I mean, I guess it wasn't meant to be. The Ravens will be eternally stuck with Clarence Moore. This might legitimately be one of the worst wide receiver rooms ever. By year's end, this was their leading receiver. It was Travis Taylor. Guess how many yards he had, too? He led the team with 421 receiving yards. Their leading receiver had 421 yards. And I guess I don't have any stats to prove it, but like, come on. Since 1990 at least, after caveman evolved and figured out how to cook food, there's no way this isn't the least amount of receiving yards in a season while leading a team. So they lost Terrell Owens, signed Deion Sanders out of retirement for the memes, and they lost Jamal Lewis for a few games because, I guess he was trying to sell a little powder on the side, allegedly. But with all that negative stuff, I mean, this seems like the most obvious setup to talk about a collapse, right? Well, no. The Ravens started out the year on a great stretch of dubs, as after demasculating Dallas 30-10, holding Vinny to a passer rating of 18.9, the NFL world was beginning to realize what Ed Reed and Ray Lewis were bringing to the table, and what they were building was absolutely special. And then they collapsed. After dropping a game, the Ravens took on the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 13 at home. Marvin Lewis had another shot at revenge as the current coach of the Bengals, but after a scoop and score, the Ravens had a 17-point lead and business was done here until Ocho Cinco got wild. This game set off a domino effect that wrecked the entire season for Baltimore. Just a few minutes into the fourth quarter, the Bengals got 2 touchdowns, then finished them off with a third and won the game in basically half of one quarter. And from there, the Ravens had no chance. They lost to Peyton again and the eventual 15-1 Steelers, led by their new quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, who already was their enemy, who they actually beat earlier in the season. And because the Colts rested their starters versus Denver, the Broncos took their playoff spot, and Baltimore missed the postseason. With Super Bowl expectations before the season, they didn't even make the playoffs. Once again, though, context, people, context. This was a disappointing season. Yeah, but this is so far from the Browns' pain. That wasn't like a historic collapse. I mean, hell, Ed Reed won the Defensive Player of the Year award, which means that's 2 years in a row of a different Raven winning the DPOY. That is actually insane. So, I mean, how bad can things really be with, what I'm gonna say is the best middle linebacker ever and the best cover safety ever on the same team? Well, the answer is actually pretty fucking bad. By 2006, it felt as if Brian Billick's stick was sort of running dry. Not that it's his fault. From every report I could find, the players still felt as if he was a great coach, but unless you're exactly Bill Belichick, a tough, hard-nosed style of play is really difficult to keep up without plateauing. Wrong coach, guys. My bad. The 2005 Ravens were not good. Derek Mason was a great addition at wideout, finally, but Kyle Bowler was not that dude. I barely talked about him, but you don't need to know anything. He just wasn't good. Still, the Ravens have yet to have a franchise quarterback, and it wasn't coming from Anthony Wright returning to play either. And so they finished the season 6-10. Ray Lewis missed a majority of the season. They lost every road game, somehow picked up the biggest blowout in Monday Night Football history versus Green Bay, and the number one thing entering the 06 season was, can you figure it out? It's quarterback. Quarterback. And also, I just gotta mention, because I'm not really talking about him that much because he's a lineman, but Jonathan Ogden, at this point, in his 10 years in the league, had made 9 Pro Bowls and 8 All-Pro teams. Just as you do. The defense was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. They have been carrying this fucking franchise for its entire existence. How long could this go on? They needed to at least try and swing for the fences, but in this draft, they instead continued with their philosophy of staying smart and taking who they believed was the best player available. And again, they were right. With 2 quarterbacks sniped in front of them with Matt Leinart and Jay Cutler, they stayed where they were and drafted defensive tackle Haloti Ngata. Another Hall of Fame level guy. I'm just so jealous, bro. They literally don't miss. But still, what about quarterback? Well, don't worry. Ozzie Newsome pushed his glasses into place and knew the time had come. No longer would they be wasting the primes of 2 of the best football players ever. No. Because after a situation where he got locked out of his own facility, Steve McNair, the former league MVP, was traded to the Baltimore Ravens at the age of 33, and he wasn't very good. But they somehow won 13 games. Okay, I mean, Steve McNair was fine, but he definitely was not what I would call an above average to good quarterback at this stage in his career. I wonder why this Ravens team was so good. Surely it was the receivers, right? I wonder if the defense had anything to do with it. And maybe this guy and also this guy had something to do with it. Okay, let's talk. The 2006 Ravens defense might have been better than 2000. Hear me out, okay? I'm not saying it was, because statistically, though, it was. But when you factor in the new era pace of play, the teams and players they had to go against, it's definitely close, just by the eye test. So the Ravens finished the year with the most picks and the second most sacks, and they were stacked. You already know about Ed Reed, T-Sizzle, Ray Lewis, and I mentioned the rookie Haloti Ngata, but they also had all-pro linebacker Adalius Thomas, Bart Scott, and more. And in this year, although they were overshadowed by the 06 Bears, the Ravens kinda were just better. They allowed the least yards per game, least first downs, and had the lowest third down conversion percentage against them. Not bad at all. And they also allowed the fewest points per game out of any team to this very moment in 2025 since 2006. And it's not very close. I mean, the 2011 49ers and 2013 Seahawks are not even on the same radar. I mean, this team, man. This team had more gas at their disposal than Josh Gordon's dealer every Sunday pregame. They played the Steelers twice and held them to 7 points total. They played New Orleans and Drew Brees, who had the #1 offense in the league, and held them to a 76 passer rating. But it was all going to amount to nothing if they didn't do something in the playoffs. Sure, they were a great defense, an all-time defense. Hell, if you look at adjusted DVOA metrics, the 2006 Ravens are the best defense ever. But the playoffs were all that mattered. And let's be honest, we know the defense is going to show up. It's really just the offense. Can Steve McNair truly be the difference between playoff disappointment and a Super Bowl for the Ravens? It's just, they would have to face the ghost of their past in order to truly achieve the highest honor in sports. It seemed like there was no other way. The Ravens would have to face the ghost of their past in order to truly achieve the highest honor in sports again. The Baltimore Ravens' first playoff game under Steve McNair took place on January 13th, 2007. And in this game, the Baltimore Ravens would take on the Indianapolis Colts in a game that many predicted would turn out to be between possibly the two best teams in the league. Both teams were quarterbacked by veterans in McNair and Manning. The Colts had a garbage run defense in the regular season, and if Baltimore's defense could somehow shut out the Colts' offense, this game should be a free win. And that's what happened. Peyton Manning couldn't find a hole that wasn't his own chocolate starfish the entire game, as he went for 170 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a passer rating of 39.6. Whew. And they also held Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne to both 51 yards for Wayne and 45 for Marv, respectfully. However, the revenge narrative in this game was huge. Baltimore wanted so badly to get through Indy on their road to a chip, and so the game began. And it was going pretty well, all things considered. The Ravens defense clamped up when needed, and it was needed. The Colts got good field position for one kick, and a Todd Heap fumble led to another field goal. And then, as usual, the defense bought the Ravens another chance. Ed Reed picked off Peyton Manning, and momentum had swung. The Ravens had the ball inside the 5, 3rd and goal, and McNair threw a pick. But don't worry, Baltimore, because of course Ed Reed's gotcha. He picked off Peyton again. So okay, down 6. Steve McNair had a chance to cement himself into Ravens lore forever. And on 3rd down and 9, he dropped back and threw another fucking pick. Please, Ravens, don't blow this. You can't. This defense is too good. And when Steve McNair got one more chance with it being a one-possession game, he threw it into the dirt twice, then got strip sacked to end it. And the Baltimore Ravens, who may have been the best team in football this season, were eliminated from the playoffs without a single win. Completely wasting, just fucking wasting an all-time great defense. Fuck. 2007 was then a lost year. At this point, I'm sorry, my energy's a little low. I'm hurt. McNair got injured and played poorly while Kyle Bowler filled in and kinda just shoved his own fist in and out of his ass. And by this point, the Ravens defense was just upset. With Todd Heap injured and Jamal Lewis now in Cleveland, the Ravens plummeted to the 9th worst offense in the league, and it was time for a drastic change. I mean, I guess they almost beat the 07 Patriots, which was cool, but it was not enough. Once again, though, I want to mention that with PFF beginning to log seasons from linemen now, in 2007 they ranked Jonathan Ogden as, still to this day, the best season from any lineman ever, and he was an old man. But like I said, who cares? An era was over. The Ravens missed the playoffs and everyone knew what was coming next. On a dark and stormy night, following one final win versus the Steelers, ownership kicked down Brian Billick's door, tied him up, taped his mouth, and dumped his body in a barrel of fire, never to be seen again. It was a good time, and a long time, but times change, and according to his players, they could tell he was still a good coach, and they still liked the guy, but his messages had grown stale, and he wasn't commanding the same level of respect he used to get. And with him, a lot of Baltimore staff were hunted down and eliminated as well, leaving the Ravens with the decision to make to shape their entire future. Will their next head coach be John Harbaugh, their special teams guy, or Commander Foot Fetish? Ultimately, they decided to give the job to John Harbaugh over Rex Ryan, which in the end turned out to be another good decision. Crazy how that works, right? There's no dysfunction here. They're just kind of only making the right calls with everything not involving quarterbacks. Sure, Harbaugh deserves some valid criticism today, but he's a hell of a coach, and it's going to be Harbaugh at head coach from here on out. But now, with Billick gone and Jonathan Ogden retiring after 07, the 2008 draft needed to be huge for their new age of development, and Ozzie Newsome fucking stepped up. Ozzie motherfucking Newsome. Look, obviously he gets a ton of credit, but the Ravens' entire scouting department has always just been obscene. I mean, that's why this video is so damn long. Even though the Ravens have only existed since 1996, they have been somewhat competitive in damn near every single season of their existence. And with their first 2 picks in the 2008 draft, the Ravens, with an absolute necessity to get 2 cornerstones, drafted quarterback Joe Flacco in the first and running back Ray Rice. Oh, for spoilers, one of these guys has been out of the NFL for about a decade plus for reasons, and the other guy is still dropping his nuts on teams to this very day. And so we now enter the Joe Flacco era. And make sure you have an extra pair of underwear on standby. You are gonna need it. But let's not sleep on year number 1, okay? Because, look, let me just say, the Ravens are such a boring team, man. Like, why can't they be like Cleveland and have like 8 guys get arrested for accidentally planting a bomb in their neighbor's pet sloth? Like, all their headlines are so boring. Jamal Lewis came through with the coke charges, but it's been dry since then. But anyways, John Harbaugh was now the coach and had to make a decision on the team's new quarterback, which has always been an issue, but there was hype finally, because gone were the days of Kyle Bowler, and before the season, it was announced that rookie quarterback Joe Flacco would be the starting quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, and bro, his receivers were Derek Mason and Mark Clayton. He is that old. The Ravens were the NFL's wildcard team. Yes, they still had this all-time great defense for like the 10th year in a row, but offense was still a massive question mark. It all came down to Joe Flacco's ability to throw a football, and although he struggled early on as the Ravens played a classic primetime game versus the Steelers, but came up just a field goal short, and I gotta say, like, say what you want, but this is insane that this game happened almost 20 years ago and both teams are still being coached by the same guy. But 2008 is probably the biggest fucking reason just to show how spoiled Ravens fans are. I don't care how many games you've lost with Lamar, alright? While Browns fans were busy celebrating almost making the playoffs recently, Ravens fans were like, yeah, it really is tough to just have an all-time great defense for 10 years in a row. If only we had more. And they got it. They got fucking more. Joe Flacco showed a lot of potential, really finding his groove from week 7 on, as he averaged 193 yards, 1.2 touchdowns, 0.5 picks, and a passer rating of 90.2. So, this version of Joe, as a rookie, was already providing the Ravens with quite possibly the best quarterback play they've had ever. The Ravens were just pretty fun this year, honestly. They were young again. They were moving good. They beat the Cowboys in their final game in Texas Stadium with their fullback popping off. Ed Reed got the longest pick six ever, so that was cool, as they went 11-5. And the hype was real, not for a playoff run right now, but the window was swung right open again for contention in the years to come, and hopefully Ray Lewis can get one more in his twilight years. First up was the Miami Dolphins, and Joe Flacco didn't play very well, but neither the fuck did Chad Pennington. Holy smokes, man. 38 pass attempts and 4 picks with 1 touchdown in garbage time? I mean, you hate to see it. Ed Reed was giving him absolute nightmares. He picked him off twice and even housed one to make things worse. It's just so stupid, man. It's so dumb. I mean, there's entire, books written by other quarterbacks on how annoyingly good Ed Reed was. He is the GOAT coverage safety, and I will not be hearing any other options. But then, we got it. Another game in the vaunted rivalry of not Ravens versus Steelers, but instead Titans versus Ravens. At this point, Eddie George had long ascended to the football afterlife, but they now picked up a new running back to fill his shoes by the name of CJ2K, Chris Johnson, and he was the most dangerous man in the league, besides Ray Rice. So when he and the Titans scored to take a 7-0 lead, this was a moment that would be crucial for Joe Flacco, because in past years, hell, even in the 2000 playoff game versus the Titans, the Ravens offense couldn't get anything going. It was the special teams and the defense that put points on the board back then, so if Flacco could match the Titans offense, or at least get some points up, that would be monumental for the defense, and he did just that.
Gonna go deep, down the sideline. It is caught into the end zone, touchdown!
Joe Flacco has arrived, and from there, the Ravens defense did their thing. They stopped them on 4th down, they got a pick, a fumble, which all left the game scoreless. But then, the game was tied up at 10. All Joe Flacco had to do, once again, was get a game-winning drive, which, of course he did. I mean, how could he not? He's Joe Flacco. This is the greatest quarterback to ever live. God, look at that. Look at that mustache, man. Holy fuck. Sorry, I got distracted again. And although there was a controversy where he probably should have been called for a delay of game, instead the Ravens picked up a chunk play to Todd Heap, and a 43-yard field goal sent the number 1 seeded Titans home as Joe Flacco became the first rookie quarterback ever to start and win his first 2 playoff games. AFC Championship time. Oh yes, this is football right here. Ravens, Steelers. Come on now. Ugly weather, 12 miles per hour winds. This was going to be a defensive gladiators duel. Teeth lost, punches thrown, Flacco's Joed. It was a fun game, but Joe Flacco forgot to take his pregame rhino pill and did not play well. The Steelers had an elite defense, and Joe ended up playing arguably the worst game of his career even to this point in 2025, going for 3 picks and a passer rating of 18.2. But they were still in it. 2 pass interference led to Ravens scores, so to be fair, Flacco's stats weren't as bad as they looked, I guess, and with 4 minutes remaining down by just 2 points, a field goal could have straight up won the game, but pinned in their own territory, it wouldn't be easy. So could Joe Flacco step up again and take Baltimore to the Super Bowl?
Picked off Polamalu. Polamalu takes it home.
Well, that'll do it. Fucking Polamalu, huh? Well, turns out the Steelers have a good safety too, and that ended it. But it's fine, okay? Once again, this was their rebuilding year. A fucking AFC Championship appearance. It is so not fair. So, by 2009, they didn't really need to do anything. They just quietly added more pieces, reloaded, installed some mods, and were ready to go back in. But this Ravens team was almost a victim to the most unlucky season ever, but guess who saved them from that fate? It's week 2. I know, beginning of the season, but this was an extremely important game. The Chargers would go on to win 13 games this season, and famously in 2010 would go on to miss the playoffs with arguably an even better team, but this year they were really, really good, is what I'm trying to say, okay? But the Ravens were right there with them, matching them blow for blow until it came down to 1 play, 4th down and 2, and the Chargers decided to test this man.
Oh my, hit in the backfield is timing it perfectly. Who else?
Yeah, it did not work. Ray Lewis is okay at football, apparently, but if the Ravens had actually lost this game, they would have missed the playoffs, as although both Joe Flacco and Ray Rice stepped up huge this year, it almost wasn't enough, even though by DVOA metrics, they were the number 1 team in the entire NFL in 2009, and they just snuck into the playoffs as the wild card, and guess what? Finally, Tom, you get to be in this video. It's been too long, I can't believe it. I mean, what are we, like, an hour in, and Tom hasn't been said once? I feel horrible, but, you know, it's time for the Ravens to have their first encounter with the Sith. The Ravens came into Gillette Stadium, a place where hopes and dreams go to get squashed under the toned cheeks of Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., and they made a fucking statement. Wait, are you even allowed to do that? Right away, Ray Rice had an 83-yard touchdown, and the Ravens just shoved their entire arm down the Patriots' throat and kept pushing. They were up 20 4-0 at one point, and with a lead that big, I mean, there's zero possibility of a comeback. No, I'm serious, there wasn't. This game was just never even a game. Ed Reed, man, he got Tom. He got the better of him, as Ed picked him off once himself, with Baltimore getting 2 other interceptions, along with sacks from Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs. This team was just not to be messed with, and then the sheriff came to town. The Ravens just could not fuck with Peyton Manning. It's that simple. Besides Brett Favre, in 2009, the Ravens did an amazing job bottling up pretty much every quarterback again, but not Peyton, as he controlled the pace of the game, and by halftime, it was 17-3, with Joe Flacco not being able to answer back with anything at all. He had a clean pocket for most of the game, he just maybe wasn't ready yet, as the Ravens fell 20-3, and murmurings began if Joe Flacco possibly was not the savior they were looking for. But the front office believed in Joe Flacco. Maybe because they didn't have a choice, but he was still better than Kyle Bowler, damn it. And so, realizing that in order to nerf the Ravens at least a little bit, the league banned them from drafting good receivers ever, and the Ravens went out and traded a 3rd and a 4th round pick for Pro Bowl wide receiver Anquan Boldin. So, if Joe Flacco finally could take a big leap again, this Ravens team, with once more a defense with 4 of the top 15 best defenders in the league in Reed, Lewis, Suggs, and Nada, could grab another piece of hardware. And 2010 was just such a confusing year. Help me out here, Ravens fans. I don't even need to say it anymore. The defense was amazing, you get that, but what's weird is the offense was kinda mid, but at the same time, the Ravens almost went 16-0. In actuality, they went 12-4, but in all 4 of their losses, they held deep 4th quarter leads. It's so wild, I don't get it. But by this point, the offense was running through Ray Rice. Flacco was more towards the middle of the league in pass attempts, but it really was just the defense again. I mean, for fuck's sake, both Haloti Ngata and Ed Reed got first place Defensive Player of the Year votes, only to be beaten out by fucking Polamalu. Yeah, the Steelers were really, really good as well. And in early December, the Ravens took on the Steelers in a game that would effectively decide they lost. 3 minutes, 22 seconds left. Up by 4, Flacco drops back and is sacked. Ball on the ground, Steelers ball. And the sack was forced by fucking Polamalu, which meant the 12-4 Baltimore Ravens, a team that almost went undefeated, had to play in the damn wild card. I mean, you just gotta love the playoff formatting, right? Now they would liquidate the assets of Kansas City by damn near 30. Matt Castle had a rough day versus Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, which meant they would once again face the Pittsburgh Steelers, this time in the divisional round. So get ready for more cinema. Lamar Woodley, James Harrison, Polamalu. This was not going to be easy for Joe Flacco. These 2 teams still hated each other. Right away, Hines Ward and Ed Reed started throwing hands, and this game had that dogfight feel all the way through. The Steelers jumped out to a 7-0 lead, but then Joe Flacco turned it on. He orchestrated 2 touchdown drives himself, and a defensive touchdown gave the Ravens a 21-point lead, and what ensued was the beginning of the worst 2-year stretch in Ravens history in terms of pure agony. So everyone who isn't a Ravens fan, okay, let's put a big smile on and let's enjoy these next couple of minutes, because this is rare, okay? Ravens pain does not come by often. On a completely pointless 3rd and 15, just textbook HB draw territory, they dumped it down to Ray Rice, who fumbled. For the first time all year, the crowd was alive, Pittsburgh scored, and now we got a game. Then, later in the 3rd quarter, Joe Flacco decided to take a shot into double coverage, which did not work. Pittsburgh then scored again. Baltimore got the ball back, fumbled the snap, Steelers ball, and this is just getting ridiculous. I have no idea how you possibly blow a game this badly in a matter of minutes, and from there it only got worse. Anquan Boldin dropped a free touchdown, which could have brought it back. They had a touchdown called back on a punt, and they lost. They were up by 2 scores versus their biggest rival late in the second half, and they blew it. This one hurt. And with Ray Lewis at 35 and Ed Reed at 32, time was running out, and the Ravens needed to at least make it to the Super Bowl in the next year, maybe 2 max. So to begin 2011, this team had some real sense of urgency. They didn't really add anyone crazy in the offseason. Ricky Williams was on this team, which is kind of crazy, but their biggest addition was rookie wideout Torrey Smith, who paired very well with Anquan Boldin, but the offense still was Ray Rice's show, and if he could somehow get even better, then the Ravens could really fuck things up this year, and yeah, that's what happened. Ray Rice was throwing punches left and right. Dude was a fantasy demon, leading the league in total scrimmage yards as he had 1,364 rushing yards and 700 receiving yards as, along with Torrey Smith and Anquan Boldin, the Ravens had a solid offense. Joe Flacco was pretty inconsistent all year, but he still provided fine QB play, but the defense was more of a concern. Terrell Suggs won the Defensive Player of the Year award, but Ray Lewis was really starting to show his age. He had a tough time guarding the younger, faster tight ends of the modern era, and in the playoffs, Ray Lewis was still their most respected player, but he might become their greatest weakness too. But something about this season just really felt like it was going to be the Ravens' year. Baltimore players to this day say the 2011 squad was their best team of this era. They swept the season series of the Steelers, with Joe Flacco combining for 4 touchdowns and no picks in those 2 games that mattered most. They were ready. They were battle-tested. Let's just pretend the divisional round wasn't as close as it was, as they beat the Texans 20-13 with TJ Yates at quarterback, and it came down to a Hail Mary, and if future Ravens legend Jacoby Jones didn't muff this one, who knows what could have happened. Regardless, though, the Ravens were back. It was AFC Championship time, and they were the one team that wasn't really scared of the Empire. Last time they faced off, it was just a trail of blood and tears in their disastrous wake. But this time was different. The Patriots were stronger. They had weapons around Brady now, but the Ravens still didn't care. Sure, they had Hernandez and Gronk, but the Ravens had a plan. Knock down everything around Tom Brady until he's one-on-one with Terrell Suggs and the rest of the defense, and then you've got him. And so, they did just that, since now they have employed the services of a certain bounty hunter by the name of Bernard Pollard, also known as the Bone Crusher. It's been a fat minute since I got to say that name, as he eliminated Gronk from the game while Ed Reed did his best to stop Hernandez, including a crucial breakup to force the Patriots to punt. The score was 23-20. Joe Flacco had been in enough of these moments before to have gained legitimate veteran experience, but was he ready yet? Could he overcome a Bill Belichick defense in New England? Could the Ravens finally get back to a Super Bowl? Handlebar stashed Flacco. It might be the most powerful human to walk this planet. He proceeded to orchestrate quite possibly the best drive in Ravens history. Efficient football. Boom, Dennis Pitta. Boom, penalty for 30 yards. And then, after Bolden fumbled out of bounds, forced by Julian Edelman, here we are. A legacy-defining play. A franchise-altering play was about to happen. With 27 seconds remaining, already inside the New England 15, Joe Flacco hits Lee Evans, who has the ball broken up at the last second. Doesn't hold on, and the Ravens have to settle for a field goal, which is disappointing as Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, and the rest of the aging Ravens defense was probably stressed to death already, but you know, whatever, what's a few more gray hairs? They knew they'd probably have to go back out there in overtime and get one more stop to win this game. Wait, hold on. You guys gotta hurry up. Oh my god, they're not ready. Hurry, just tap in the chip shot. Revolting. Just absolutely revolting. Your soldiers just went to war for a 16-game season, 2 playoff games, and your veterans gave you everything they had, and it's over on a chip shot field goal. I mean, this is the type of game and moment that has destroyed countless franchises, sending them spiraling down into just making desperate, horrible decisions, but that didn't happen with the Ravens, and the reason for that is, in my eyes, obviously the smart general managers that they have and all the people in the scouting department, but Ray Lewis. And what I believe is the greatest speech ever given on record. And so, I'm going to play that entire speech because I really do think it is worth it. But if you don't want to listen to that, you can skip ahead if you want or go piss or something. But I really urge you to give it a listen because it is bone-chilling.
I'm trying to tell y'all, God has never made a mistake. He's never made one mistake. All right? So it ain't about one play, it ain't about nothing. This year, we did what we were supposed to do. We fought as a team. We fought as a team. There will be one Super Bowl champ crown at the end of this year. That's it. So the way we feel, somebody gonna feel like that tomorrow, and somebody gonna feel like that in a week. That's a fact. And the fact is, we got to come back and go to work to make sure we finish it next time. That's all we got to do. Remember that, man. God has never made a mistake. But we done came too far to drop our head. Joe, you played your ass off. You hear me, man? I'm telling you, man. Don't ever drop your head when it comes to a loss, dog. Because there's too much pain outside of this that people really going through. This right here makes us stronger. Let's understand who we are as a team. Let's understand who we are as men. And let's make somebody smile when we walk out of here. Hell yeah, we lost the game, but so what? So what? I kept something inside of me so bad last night. A 17-year-old child. You know about the child, coach. He passed 10 a.m. yesterday morning. Of bone cancer. His mama called me bowling. So sometimes you gotta ask yourself, how great is your pain? If he give you enough of our opportunity to come back and do it again. We got an opportunity to keep going, man. Let's be strong as a team, man. Let's be who we are. Ravens on 3. 1, 2, 3. Ravens!
How great is your pain if you got another opportunity to come back and do it again? And this made the 2012 Ravens one of the most motivated teams in NFL history. Now, there's just something about a heartbreaking loss at damn near the highest level that can birth an unstoppable machine. But the 2012 Ravens were not a team that followed that formula. In the offseason, their best player, Terrell Suggs, suffered a torn Achilles and would be plagued with injuries even when he returned midway through the season. Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were both on their last legs, with Lewis later on announcing that he was going to retire after the season. But to me, their biggest game of the 2012 regular season that told the Ravens themselves that they could possibly do it this year was their Week 3 game versus the Patriots. A game in which Torrey Smith went absolutely ballistic despite his brother passing away just hours prior, and with Ed Reed consoling him, who previously lost a brother as well, the entire team played with a heavy heart, and following a pass breakup by the Bone Crusher and a Justin Tucker field goal, who's here now, the Ravens rode that momentum throughout the whole season, finishing with a 10-6 record. But this whole year just had Last Dance vibes to it. But once again, they almost missed the playoffs. If Ray Rice didn't pick up this 4th and fucking 29, their story could have ended right there. But it didn't, as the Ravens decided to also fire their offensive coordinator Cam Cameron as the year winded down, hoping to spark something on an offense that had regressed from a year prior. So although it isn't unprecedented for a team to fire their offensive coordinator and then just go on to win the Super Bowl, it's definitely not super likely, if you can believe it or not. But in the wild card, they got thrown a bit of a freebie, as in Ray Lewis's last ever home Ravens game, and what would turn out to be the same for Ed Reed as well. The Ravens made quick work of a young Andrew Luck, with Anquan Boldin going for 150 yards, but the football gods would not allow it any other way. If Baltimore was going to make a Super Bowl, or at least have a chance to do so, they needed to beat Peyton Manning. It had been a decade since they've defeated the Sheriff, and with a new core around him in Denver, he seemed somewhat immortal and nobody was giving the Ravens a chance. Manning versus the Ravens was about as much of a certainty for a win as possible in this league, but this was a different Ravens team. They were not going down easy again. Ray Lewis deserves better. Ed Reed deserves better. They were going to battle to the very end, and if it wasn't enough, then so be it. But when the Ravens failed on a 4th and 5 late in the 4th quarter, down by 7, it seemed over. However, Baltimore got one more chance, and I mean, you know what happens next.
Into the end zone, touchdown, Jacoby Jones!
At this point, Ray Lewis was like 65% mechanical. But now, finally, unlike last season, the Ravens defense had a chance to change this game, and they did exactly that. 3rd and 1, they stopped Denver, but Flacco and the offense stalled. They needed more from this old defense, and they just kept delivering. They picked off the Sheriff, and Justin Tucker from 47 yards out was good. So this was great and all. I mean, you know, casually one of the best playoff games ever, but when you get this far in the gauntlet that is the NFL playoffs and you get a win like that, I mean, an emotional high of that magnitude can wreck a team, but not the Ravens, because part 3 of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed versus Brady and Belichick would ensue. And the Ravens once again were beaten, stripped naked, and left with nothing but a stick and tasked with slaying a god. As entering halftime, the Ravens had played well, but not well enough, finding themselves down 6 against the defending Super Bowl attendee Patriots, which isn't that bad on paper, right? But this is Tom Brady we're talking about here. And coming into this game, at this point in time, and hell, in 2015, the New England Patriots at Gillette Stadium were 71-0 when leading at halftime in the regular season. At the time in 2012, they were undefeated in the postseason as well when leading at halftime, and the Ravens defense in the second half delivered a absolute masterclass. This second half might be the best half the Ravens have ever played to this moment. Joe Flacco, when it mattered, versus Tom Brady, was routinely better than Tom Brady. I mean, he had confidence. Joe called himself the best quarterback in the league before the year, and now he was playing like it. And the Ravens held one of the best modern NFL offenses we've seen scoreless for the second half, pouring it on the Patriots in the process to finally do it. They won the game 28-13 in what became a blowout, with the play that really ended it being a hit on Stephen Ridley by Bernard Pollard. Terrell Suggs walked off and told the Patriots to have fun at the Pro Bowl, and they made it to the Super Bowl. It took years. It took agony. And finally, the Baltimore Ravens made the Super Bowl in Ray Lewis's final season. And I do not care how old they are. You do not want to see Ray Lewis and Ed Reed in a Super Bowl, leaving it all on the line for one game. But the Ravens' opponent was a powerhouse in and of itself, but also too familiar. John Harbaugh versus Jim Harbaugh. Which brother would prevail? In their previous matchup, which was 2011, the Ravens won a defensive battle, but this game was different. In a neutral field, Joe Flacco just, continued to play like a future Hall of Famer. Boom, boom, boom. They just kept punching. Anquan Boldin was unguardable. The Ravens defense forced a key fumble, and Baltimore was just running away with it. Wouldn't that be nice though, huh? If the Ravens could make everything look easy and just walk away with a blowout win in the Super Bowl. It was 21-6 in the first half, and then Jacoby Jones did this.
And he is flying inside the 20. What a kickoff return. 109 yards and a touchdown. An all-time record.
From the back of the end zone, Jacoby Jones ended the game, and the Ravens would go on to destroy the 49ers. Well, the lights went off. You know how this works, right? Momentum was killed, and this was exactly what the 49ers needed. All conspiracies aside, this was also probably just an accident, but it did really help the Niners. Ray Lewis had less than 30 minutes of game time left in his entire career, and by the time the lights were back on, after about 30 minutes also, it was all 49ers from there. This was not going to be like 2000, because their opponent was not Kerry Collins. The 49ers were disgusting, and the Ravens got, well, complacent. And just like that, this game was looking like the Steelers game all over again.
There's a ball to the Rice. Ball's out! Ball's out! By Brown!
Oh, fuck. No, not like this. It can't end like this. It just can't. Well, the Ravens at least got a field goal, which wasn't good enough. They needed to take pressure off the defense because they were gassed. Cap scored, and now the ever-important two-point conversion would happen. The Ravens sent a blitz, and it worked. And then Joe Flacco and the Ravens did something the Ravens offense previously could not. They scored again. Well, not a touchdown, but 3 more points was monumental, and it was all going to come down to one drive. Could the Ravens defense, could Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Ed Reed, Haloti Ngata get one more stop to win the Super Bowl. But when Frank Gore ran it inside the 10-yard line, it was not looking good. First and goal, a stop. Second and goal, they got Kaepernick moving in space, another stop. And now it was going to come down to 2 plays. Third down and fourth down. The intensity level could not have been higher. And when Cap took the snap, they went Crabtree's way again, and Jimmy Smith popped him. And now Ray Lewis's time in Baltimore was seconds away from ending. And the only thing separating the 2012 Ravens from immortality was one play.
One play. One play. One play. Lost it in the air.
The Baltimore Ravens were Super Bowl champions again. That's all that matters. But this was an end of an era. Ray Lewis retired, Ed Reed left, Anquan Boldin gone to the 49ers, Bernard Pollard crushed too many bones, and tight end Dennis Pitta was out for the year with injury as well. So while the 49ers maintained themselves as true contenders, people began to question, immediately after the Ravens won a Super Bowl, if they would even make the playoffs in 2013. And well, they didn't, as this year began the, quote, dark ages for the Ravens. And their biggest issue in 2013 was the lack of offensive talent, Joe Flacco regressing, and protection. Because through all of Joe Flacco's career, if you can get him some solid protection, he can pick apart defenses even in the big 2025. But that is not what happened 12 years ago, as the Ravens had the worst offensive line in the league, despite Marshall Yonda being great. But they traded for lineman Eugene Monroe, which fixed some issues, but by year's end, Flacco finished the season as the second most sacked quarterback in the league, and so far he was not living up to the 6-year, $130 million contract he signed a few months ago, and from here, his play only declined more and more. But that was just a down year, right? Surely. They had a cool game versus the Vikings, wild ending, scored a few touchdowns, but the Ravens missed the playoffs, and Joe Flacco and Ray Rice battled injuries, and 8-8 was not enough to make the tournament in 2013. But honestly, I think it was just because they drafted Kyle Juszczyk this year. I mean, he's clearly not allowed to win Super Bowls. Okay, Ravens, listen, just calm down, okay? You calm the fuck down. You are dangerously close to completely imploding. I've seen this so many times, okay? I've had to bring out the board in the past years for the Cleveland Browns and all that stuff. Do not make me do some things like that, okay? If you...
A lot of people were talking today about the NFL's 2-game suspension of star running back Ray Rice of the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, it's, I guess I said before the Ravens have some boring headlines, which is still true. I stand on that. Still love the alligator one. That's an all-time favorite from me. But when they get headlines, boy golly, do they get headlines. The Ray Rice situation is unavoidable. First of all, my fantasy team got tanked when this happened, yeah. And then secondly, wow, what a terrible person Ray Rice is. But this famous case goes a little deeper than just football. So the incident itself occurred in February, and although he was publicly arrested, nothing came of it by the NFL itself other than a 2-game suspension in which the Ravens said, okay, fine, that's fair, whatever. But then in September, the video was released, and I'm holding strong for my wife. You sure did, buddy. It's just about as bad as you can possibly imagine. But the NFL was under fire for handling this situation horribly. It had been months, and all they thought was necessary was a 2-game suspension. And it got to a point where the big Roger himself almost lost his job, and so Goodell brought down the hammer and basically banned Ray Rice from the NFL forever. But besides losing their franchise running back and having 5 other dudes getting arrested, not much happened for the Ravens. A quiet offseason, of course, but they did add Justin Forsett and Steve Smith, who both were massive additions to the offense. But come on, this team wasn't that good, right? However, after week 5, they really turned it on. They were fine before this turning point, but Justin Forsett finally got a workhorse role and made the most of it. And still, just 2 years removed from losing fucking Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, two of the best defensive players to ever hold a brown ball, the Ravens built another great defense. Once again, this shit ain't fair. They were as dominant as before, but they still had T-Sizzle and Haloti Ngata, but also Elvis Dumervil was stolen from Denver to give them all-pro level production, and they drafted another great linebacker in C.J. Mosley in 2014. So, okay, yeah, the Ravens were good again, just like that. Why not? Why wouldn't the Ravens just bounce back like that? But to be honest, the Ravens were never serious contenders. They almost became contenders as they handled Pittsburgh in the wild card, and then versus the Patriots, who would go on to win the Super Bowl, they gave them everything they could handle and barely lost after a Joe Flacco pick. So there was optimism going into 2015, but this is where the most mid-era of Ravens football ever begins. Finally! It took 20 fucking years, but we got there. Finally, some years where they aren't just straight up potentially winning a Super Bowl, because after starting out 1-6, the season ended, simply put. Injuries piled up on Baltimore as well. Terrell Suggs missed almost the whole year with another significant Achilles injury that basically ended his career as an elite player. Justin Forsett broke his arm, was never the same again. Steve Smith tore his Achilles as well. And even Joe Flacco suffered a season-ending injury. And the Ravens began to stagnate. And yeah, from there the Ravens would miss the playoffs for the next 2 seasons, both in their own special little way. They went 8-8 in 2016, dropping their 2 last games to both the Steelers and Bengals, so that felt good. And then in 2017, we got an all-timer. 4th down and long, Tyler Boyd scores a touchdown, eliminating the 9-7 Ravens from the playoffs, sending Buffalo to the playoffs in their place in what was believed to be Marvin Lewis's last game as Bengals head coach. At this point, going into 2018, John Harbaugh was starting to get criticism along with the players. For the last 5 years, he had a record of 40-40, and as a whole, the Ravens since Ray Lewis have become the embodiment of mid itself. Joe Flacco had just been okay, but the defense was still really good. By this point, they added Eric Weddle, Matthew Judon, Zadarius Smith, and I guess Terrell Suggs was still here, metaphorically, but yeah. Ozzie Newsome was still killing the draft, but he announced after the 2018 season he would retire. He still had it, but he had carried this organization for the last 20 years, and now he wanted to master his golf game. You know, do old people stuff like that. But come on now. If you don't think Ozzie Newsome, the Ozzie Newsome, isn't going to go out with an absolute bang in his last draft class, I'm sorry. You would simply be mistaken, because once again, man, I can't say this enough. I am so fucking jealous of this team and the way they draft. In the 2018 draft, Ozzie Newsome drafted Orlando Brown Jr., Pro Bowler, Mark Andrews, Pro Bowler. Solid stuff, but with their first round pick, Ozzie and the Ravens took tight end Hayden Hurst, but they were not done yet. They were taking a look at a certain quarterback. Then, the Patriots, a team they were sure would go quarterback, took Sony Michel, and all of a sudden, Ozzie thought they had a chance. They called Philadelphia, begged them for their pick, got it, and then, with the 32nd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens, with their last ever first-round pick made by Ozzie Newsome, made their greatest decision since drafting Ray Lewis. Lamar Jackson. Have you heard of him? He was not very happy to almost fall out of the first round and was ready to set the league ablaze. Just not yet. He needed more time to cook, so for now it was Joe Flacco time. I'm sorry, I had to find some time to squeeze in this picture. I love it so much. It gives off major Breaking Bad shitpost vibes, and I really like it. I don't need to say anything the fuck else, right? Unless you've been huffing nos for the last 7 years, you know how good Lamar Jackson will become. I don't need to give you the whole backstory, but it was still the Joe Show. And to his credit, Joe Flacco continued playing incredibly mid-football. He was just fine. But then, in Week 11, Flacco went down with an ass injury, and in came the former Heisman winner Lamar Jackson, and Joe Flacco would never get the starting job back ever again. Ah, crap. Lamar Jackson was already good? Shit. Well, would you look at that? Fucking Ozzie Newsome, bro. He came in, set the Ravens up for 20 years with Ogden and Lewis, won 2 chips, then set him up for another decade plus with Lamar and then dipped. Give him another bust. I know he's already in the Hall of Fame as a player, but I don't care. This man is the Ravens. He's more important to their franchise than any one man is to any other franchise in the league, besides maybe Belichick was to the Patriots and like Paul Brown. So, okay. Lamar Jackson, go Burr. The Ravens went 10-6. CJ Mosley reversed what happened last year versus Cincinnati, and this time Baltimore got in the playoffs on a last-second play. They won the division, and the elderly Terrell Suggs, who was still on the team, got to sit down and witness the passing of the torch from Flacco to Lamar. And hopefully with it came the ability to win another Super Bowl in Baltimore. I'm sorry. Yeah, nobody really thought the Ravens were making noise in 2018. Not because they were bad, but they just weren't ready yet. This fucking team, bro, it's so not fair. This is like the 6th time this team has a 10-win rebuild season. I hate myself. Why am I doing this? So, yeah. Although it would have been the funniest thing ever to see the Ravens trade Lamar and commit to the 34-year-old Flacco as Ozzie Newsome collapsed on hole 8, that didn't happen. And instead, we move on to another era of Baltimore football, basically their 3rd era ever, all of which have delivered a Super Bowl so far, with this era still being ongoing even to this very moment, and that being the Lamar Jackson era.
For only the 2nd time in history, there was just one person that this year everyone voted for. So congratulations to this year's most valuable player, Lamar Jackson.
Chase him, say my name, I pop up like the boogeyman. Fucking the game over, dropping bangers with no hook. If you ain't never took him in, nigga, calm down.
Yeah, in week 1, right away in 2019, we knew fantasy football was cooked. If you had Lamar Jackson this year, you probably just won your league. In week 1, the Ravens offense was explosive right away. You know, some light, 59 points. One of the best games a quarterback has ever played in the history of this game. 3 incompletions, 320 yards, and 5 touchdowns. 158.3 perfect passer rating from Lamar. Not terrible, as meanwhile, his draft buddy Josh Rosen from Miami went for 1 completion with a pick. Sick. Well, there goes the Lamar can't throw narrative. Okay, turns out the guy who was begged to play any position other than quarterback just played a perfect game. But surely he'll come back down to earth, right? And he actually did. The Ravens went 4-1 from weeks 3 through 7, but Lamar was averaging about 200 yards, 1 pick, 1 touchdown, and just a passer rating of 75, and, you know, damn near 100 rushing yards, but he was only slightly above average, which made what he did for the rest of the season all the more otherworldly.
Oh! He broke his ankles! He is Houdini!
He began to break what it even meant to play quarterback. After Lamar Jackson introduced himself to Tom Brady and the Patriots in a win, the Ravens didn't lose another game for the rest of the regular season. And once again, they had a great defense. They had new pieces like Earl Thomas, who made a Pro Bowl impact right away. An old Ozzie pick in Marlon Humphrey developed into a Pro Bowl caliber player. And they had the 3rd best defense in the entire league, as well as one of the best offenses ever assembled. By year's end, Lamar Jackson, in his first year starting in the league, led the league in touchdowns with 36. Had a 9% touchdown percentage. 9% of the time he threw a pass, he scored. He averaged a 113.3 passer rating and was a 1,000-yard rusher. And along with Mark Ingram, these two led the Ravens to having the most rushing yards in a single season by any football team in the modern era. And they were beating the NFL's best, too. Like I said, they beat the 12-4 Patriots. They beat the 49ers, at the time the best team in football. They beat the 9-3 Bills with Josh Allen. They were for real. This team had the highest SRS score since the bloody merger from any team that wasn't the 91 Skins or the 07 Patriots. This offense was just so unique. Nobody could run an offense like Baltimore because nobody else had Lamar Jackson, the unanimous MVP of the league. And although they lost a massive burst to their offense with Mark Ingram's injury as the year winded down, the Ravens waited in the divisional round with their best shot at a Super Bowl since 2012. And you'll never guess who they played. the fucking Titans. Eddie George was back. At the age of 54, he came out of retirement for revenge, along with the rest of the Tennessee Titans. I'm telling you, bro, this rivalry is better than any Ravens rivalry not involving the Steelers. And the Tennessee Titans were a scary team on paper for Baltimore. They were honestly pretty similar to their 2000 selves. This Titans team was physical. They had a sledgehammer running back, similar to Eddie George, and the Titans had a plan to beat them up. So although the Ravens were heavy favorites, the Titans got the best of Baltimore and just ended their perfect season like that. Lamar was simply contained. He was incredible still, but he had his weaknesses, and honestly, the Titans were a terrible matchup, like I said. They had an excellent game plan and followed it perfectly. Lamar was forced to stay in the pocket, and the Titans made him beat them as a passer, which he couldn't. The Ravens had a chance to actually tie this game in the third, but a failed fourth down, Derrick Henry long-ass run, a Henry thrown touchdown, and a Lamar fumble all in like 2 minutes ended the game. And well, this was only the beginning of the Lamar Jackson era of, I guess, disappointment so far. The 2020 season was the 2020 season, so nothing really made sense. But going into Week 12, the Ravens were still one of the NFL's best teams. Their only losses were to the Chiefs, undefeated Steelers, and an overtime loss to the Titans, which is pretty damn good if you ask me. But then things got freaky. The Ravens played the Steelers with RG3 starting at quarterback on a Wednesday. Let me say that again. The Ravens played the Steelers with Robert Griffin III in 2020 on a Wednesday, and then bounced back next week after the loss to play the Cowboys on a Tuesday. But all of that was nothing compared to what would happen on Monday Night Football. This is that poop story I talked about a fucking hour ago, okay? It's coming back. Versus the Cleveland Browns, who were good. I know, I'll give you a minute to collect yourself, but this game was a shootout. 2 high-tier offenses slicing through whatever was in their way until the chili kicked in. Lamar Jackson exited the game, and in his place, Trace McSorley held down the fort for Baltimore, or at least he tried, but they needed Lamar. So while he was in the bathroom taking a biblical poop, the Ravens were treading water. All hope seemed lost, but then on 4th and 5, Lamar Jackson returns to the game, comes in and finds Hollywood Brown, and they're still in it. I can't believe it. The change of pants was clutch. Lamar was back, but now he needed to go get a game-winning field goal opportunity, and with prime Justin Tucker, all they needed was to get inside the 50, and they did, as the Ravens won an all-timer. 47-42. And the Ravens went 11-5 too, making the playoffs where another chapter of the Titans-Ravens rivalry would be written. The Titans were very good again, but finally, Lamar was able to chip at least a little bit into that narrative that already surrounded him that he can't win in the playoffs, as he didn't play amazing, but the Ravens defense bottled up Derrick Henry completely while Lamar ran fast on offense as Baltimore danced on Tennessee's logo, but that kinda only lasted a week. 1 week later, versus Buffalo, everything blew up again. Lamar was really bad. He threw a game-losing pick in the end zone and got injured too. And now in his first 3 years in the league, in 4 playoff games, he had an average passer rating of 69.57. with his highest passer rating game in the playoffs being a 74 versus the Titans. And remember, this is one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league's history. So by this point, everyone knew Lamar was great, but he still had accuracy and precision issues to work on, but there might be fundamental problems with the way the Ravens offense was being run now. Because at this point, since 2017, the Ravens were now the only team in the entire NFL that had lost every single game in which they fell behind by 10 points. So this Greg Roman scheme wasn't working, and unfortunately in 2021, they didn't make any changes, as the season kind of became a lost year when Lamar Jackson suffered a season-ending injury, and the Ravens missed the playoffs with an 8-9 record. But Tucker got the field goal record, so there's that. So I couldn't tell you why, but people were doubting Lamar's ability to improve. So in week 2, he charred up some sushi again. The team lost, but damn near 450 total yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 142 passer rating is not bad to start the year, right? You know, just a little warm up. And the Ravens front office knew that with Lamar's contract situation getting weird, we'll get there in a second, they wanted to go all in right now. The offense was basically just Lamar, so they turned to the defense and traded for All-Pro linebacker Roquan Smith. And in 2022, they drafted Kyle Hamilton, one of the best free safeties in the game. But boy, did things get weird this season. So the Ravens were rolling, top 3 defense and an MVP candidate in Lamar, but then he got hurt again and was out for the season. But we didn't know that at the time, and so in his absence, the Ravens turned to Tyler Huntley, who did not play well and got hurt too, which led to Anthony Brown. Yeah, Anthony Brown is a human being. Started a Ravens game in 2022. It's really a shame. This was such a good team. And if they had Lamar, they could have been contenders. But with the Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley, yes, once again, you probably know, but he made the Pro Bowl with 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions on the season. They fell in the final week of the regular season to Cincinnati, which, if they won, would have forced a weird coin flip situation to decide who would get home field advantage in the playoffs, but since they lost, the Ravens traveled on the road to Cincinnati anyways, and Huntley goofed. So this is where things get very interesting. Everyone knows in the offseason of 2022, going into 23, Lamar Jackson famously requested a trade, and seemingly nobody wanted him. But is that really true? I mean, we had fucking Jimmy Garoppolo. There's no way we weren't interested, right? This entire situation, though, was sort of in retrospect like a poker game. Remember, at this time, the Cleveland Browns had just shattered the entire quarterback market on Deshaun Watson, and owners in general did not want this to be the new norm. So when Lamar requested a trade and was shopped around, nobody budged. Why make this the standard as people continued spreading terrible things about Lamar, saying this and that, trying to diminish his value, but at the same time, Lamar himself said this trade request was just a negotiation ploy, as with contract talks stalling, he wanted to light a fire under the Ravens, and so Baltimore eventually caved in. And after even more toxic narratives began to spread about Lamar, the Ravens gave him a 5-year, $260 buckaroo contract, and yeah, turns out Lamar Jackson was worth it still. With new offensive coordinator Todd Monken, he completely unlocked a brand new version of Lamar, and that was a terrifying concept for the rest of the league. And the 2023 Ravens became one of the best teams in the last decade plus. You know the drill at this point, right? Baltimore had a top 10 defense for 30 years at this point, but in 2023, they had the number 1 defense. Roquan Smith, All-Pro. Kyle Hamilton, All-Pro. Patrick Queen, All-Pro. Nnamdi Madubuike, All-Pro. And offense. The offense was not all that bad either. You know, the run game was a bit lackluster, but with new receiver Zay Flowers helping them out, the Ravens made Lamar the system, but not in a triple option way as previously. Instead, they focused more on highlighting Lamar's improved accuracy and his ability to be a passer, because guess what? He really, really could throw the football better than anyone now. Once again, how is this fair? Lamar won another MVP, blah, 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 the best player in the world. Fuck you, Ravens fans. I don't like this at this point. I hate that you're happy, and I'd spend more time on this season, but he had a better year just 1 year later. And he saved his best for when it mattered most. Again, the Ravens beat the 49ers on Christmas Day, and with the voting process really heating up, he went 18 for 21, 321 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 158.3, perfect passer rating. My GOAT, Lamar. You can't keep doing this to them. This is not normal. When this man retires, I swear, he's gonna own like 8 of the top 10 games a quarterback has ever played from an efficiency standpoint. So Lamar Jackson was the best player in football in the regular season, but he still had to get that playoff monkey off his back. I mean, at this point, it was more of a fucking gorilla, but in the divisional round versus Houston, he had a slow first half, but he eventually turned it on, and the Ravens dealt with a rookie CJ Stroud easily. So, okay, good. Now it was Mahomes' time, though. This was the time for Lamar to prove that he is the worthy successor to Ray Lewis as the face of the Ravens, the Chiefs. The NFL's new dynasty was at their weakest point. The Ravens were so much better on paper, but this game had the perfect opportunity at the same time to take that mantle from Kansas City. And guess what? Lamar and the Ravens fell down 10. It was 17-7 in the late third, but then the talent came through and just a great play by Lamar. And what?
Offense number 4.
Taunting? bro, you can't do that. Okay, well, it's fine. Just punch it in the end zone so we got ourselves a game.
Flowers, he dives, the ball came out.
Fuck me. Okay, well, honestly, this game was supposed to be close, but it wasn't. The Ravens were playing catch-up the entirety of it, and Lamar Jackson finished the game with an awful pick that left a terrible fucking taste in everyone's mouth. And the Baltimore Ravens, with arguably their most talented team ever, failed to make the Super Bowl and watched as an inferior Chiefs team beat the same team they annihilated just a few weeks prior in the Super Bowl. Great! You know, awesome. Which then brings us to the most recent season in Baltimore, the 2024 Ravens. And... I'll say it for the final time. I swear this is the last time. It's not fair. Lamar Jackson may have just had the best season a quarterback has ever had, and apparently we had a chance to get him. The Ravens offense got a little bit better. You know, they added former Titan and Hall of Fame running back Derrick Henry in the backfield, which made Lamar even more dangerous, as after starting out the year 0-2 and being just fine, from weeks 3 through 10, he averaged 270 yards, 3 touchdowns, only threw 1 pick during that entire stretch of games, which was not his fault, and had a passer rating of 136.1 on average. If he threw more than 6 incompletions in a game, that would be a below average game for Lamar Jackson. It is not okay. The regular season stats say that he was the best player in the league. The advanced stats say he was the best player in the league. He had the highest wins above replacement in the league, and I'm done, bro. I'm done! This season will get the respect it deserves eventually, as he had damn near 2 perfect passer rating games in 3 weeks, including a shootout with the Bengals and a massive win, as the Ravens, with a still very, very good defense, went 12-5 and were true Super Bowl contenders again. In what seemed like a trap game versus the Steelers in the wild card, the Ravens got the job done and moved on to a snowy game in Buffalo. Lamar Jackson, who did not win the MVP, versus Josh Allen, the 2024 MVP. And the game was just about as horrible of a start for Lamar as possible. He threw a terrible pick again, fumbled, and it was happening again. The Bills looked to be pulling away, but Lamar had himself a great second half though, and was tasked with going down the field, scoring, getting a 2-point conversion, and giving the Ravens a chance at overtime. Flacco did it versus Denver, and now it was Lamar's time to do it versus Buffalo, and their MVP quarterback did just that. What a fucking statement drive. Lamar Jackson was in complete control. The Ravens stole the momentum. The crowd was completely shocked. The crowd was shocked.
Flip it. Got it. Oh, the ball was dropped.
Well, that doesn't feel great. Lamar absolutely got flamed for this game, damn near more than Mark Andrews did. And he deserved some criticism for sure, but damn it, when it mattered most, he played his best football. But it all amounted to nothing. It's the same as the Billy Cundiff miss. And at this point, the Lamar Jackson era has produced 0 Super Bowl appearances and only 1 AFC Championship appearance since 2018. But at least they still have plenty of time to add a 3rd piece of jewelry to the case, and I would not be surprised if the Ravens win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years. So alright, that's it. From all their different eras, the way that they were born from misery, basically giving the Browns all of their pain and taking all the happiness for themselves, Ray Lewis and the amazing 2000s team, how they were kind of plateauing for most of the later part of the 2000s, Joe Flacco came in, they won another Super Bowl, plateaued again, Lamar Jackson comes in, and now they're back in contention. The Ravens have been one of the best run teams in the history of sports, and although I am still jealous, I'd be insane to at least not respect and admire what the Ravens have done. And yes, their birth as an NFL franchise was a bit unconventional, but since then, they have become one of the model franchises for everyone to admire. But anyways, if you like this video, then subscribe, because I got a lot of videos on the channel just like this one. And if you did like this video, then watch this video I did a few days back on the NFL draft and, you know, all the reactions from that. It's pretty good, trust me. And thanks to all my Patrons for pledging the tiers. It truly does mean a lot. But anyways, until next time.